Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. This week we're going to do some work again on Mike PXD and Ninja's blue R32 GTR. This week we're just going to do something very simple. So if you have one of these and you want to kind of get familiar with doing some wrenching on the car yourself, this is a great project to start with. We're just going to do the spark plugs. And this is a great thing to do for a couple of reasons. One, I do think you should do the spark plugs about every 2 or 3 oil changes because they're not expensive to do. And 2, by pulling the spark plugs and taking a look at them, I'm going to show you how to read the spark plugs so you can figure out what's happening inside the engine, especially if you're not running a wideband O2. Most notably, we want to pay attention to the number 6 spark plug. The reason why is whenever you run forced air induction on a car, especially when it has a plenum like this, the air gets rammed into the plenum and it hits this back part, it has nowhere to go. And so consequently, more air runs into the number 6 cylinder than all the other ones. Some cars are very smart and they've already accounted for this, and the ECU does shoot more fuel into the number 6 cylinder, but not all of them do. So it's going to be nice to take a look at these spark plugs and see exactly how this engine's looking, what's its health looking like, and do we need to consider some sort of fuel management so we can richen up the number 6 cylinder. All right, so before we get started, I'm going to walk you through some of the stuff you're going to need. Like I said, this is a very easy job, so you're not going to need a lot. There is one tool that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to this that you are going to need, and if you don't have it in your kit, you're going to want to add it anyways. The first thing, of course, you're going to need is the spark plugs. We're going with iridium. There's lots of different ways to go. The cool thing about iridiums is they come pre-gapped. You're not supposed to gap iridium plugs, so if you don't want to go through that step, good way to go. The part number on these for the R32 GTR RB26 is 5691. You can find these on Amazon or anywhere else that you feel comfortable buying car parts. You're just going to need a standard set of tools. You're not going to need a lot here. You're really only going to need the spark plug wrench, which is usually it has like a little rubber grommet in it, so it holds the spark plugs. We're going to need, this is the tool that I was talking about, this might not be in your kit if you're a newer kit, is some Allen head wrenches, because there's some Allen bolts holding this top cover on. You're going to probably need about a 10 millimeter, and that's going to remove this igniter and probably also the coil packs. So we're going to go ahead and start digging in there, and if I've missed anything, I'll let you know as we go along. At this point, I'm sure you think you know where we're going to start with this project. You're probably thinking we're going to take off these bolts right here and remove the spark plug cover. However, there is something you need to do first before you do that, and that is right here. This is the igniter. This is actually what sends the power to the coils. Now, there's 2 ways to kind of get past this, because as you can see, it is attached to the spark plug cover. You can either just unclip it here, but the problem is if you remove the clip, there's still a grounding wire attached to the igniter. So the easiest thing to do is actually just remove these 4 bolts right here, pull the igniter off the spark plug cover, that way it'll come free, nice and easy, and we can get at the spark plugs. And they're usually on there. They shouldn't be too terribly tight because you don't need to reef this down at all. All right, now that we've got the 4 bolts out, this igniter's loose, you can actually kind of pick it up, slide it back. There's a clip right here that's going to come with it. All you have to do is squeeze and it comes loose, and you move this out of the way, which will free up the spark plug cover. Now it's time to actually get the spark plug cover off. This is also very easy to do. This is where you need the Allen wrench that I mentioned earlier, and all you just need to do is break these loose. Now, a little note when it comes to these is that there are 8 here which are perfectly visible. However, there are 2 back here that are a real pain in the ass to get to. They're kind of in between some wires and they're back behind and no one really sees them. So what a lot of people do who've worked on this before, they just don't even put them in because you've got 8 holding this down. And to be honest, this really isn't a critical piece. This is just a cover. In fact, a lot of people, when they start running more power out of the RB26, they don't even put this on. The reason why is it traps heat in what they call the canyon here, and it'll actually roast your coils quicker. So if you're doing the spark plug change, you have a choice to make here. You can either put this on for cosmetics sake, or you can leave it off and keep your coil packs a little cooler. Now I'm going to check these back here to see if they're even, no. So whoever worked on this before, they had the same train of thought. There's no reason to put these in here because they are a pain in the ass. They're also a shorter bolt, which means, like I said, it's just a headache that you really don't need to do. So if you're doing this, if you're somebody who has to have every bolt and everything perfect, yeah, you'll want to find them and put them in. However, if you're somebody who's like, well, I can't see it, nobody knows they're there, I don't care, might as well leave them off if you even decide to put this back on. Now, of course, also once we get these bolts off, to get this thing to clear, you do have to take off your oil filler right here. And then of course, you're going to want to put that right back on because you don't want anything falling into your engine. So we got the spark plug cover out of the way now. We now have access to our coils. This is, like I said, very easy. So we're just gonna go ahead and squeeze the tabs, pull these off, there we go. And we're just gonna go ahead and remove all of these one at a time. Carefully, you do wanna be careful with these tabs because being with this has the cover on it, this is gonna get really hot, like I said, and it's gonna cook these. It can make the plastic a little brittle. So take your time with these tabs. Don't rush it because you don't wanna crack these. Then after we've removed all of the plugs, there's some bolts right down here. You remove those and this all comes out as a 2-piece mechanism, and then we'll have access to the spark plugs.
And yeah, that one's split, so it should come off soon. But all right.
All right, now that we've gotten all that stuff out of the way, we finally get to the whole point of this, and that is changing out the spark plug. So we're just gonna go ahead and use our spark plug wrench here. Let's see if there we go. Whoever did this put these on way too tight. That's why you only do these hand tight. There we go. All right. Ooh, that's looking a little black. Yeah, this engine's running really, really rich. But let's pull all the plugs before I give a final breakdown on what the cylinders are doing. Now that we got the old spark plug out, time to put the new one in. Of course, we got the spark plug socket here with the rubber grommet so it doesn't fall out. Now, typically when you're doing a spark plug change, you would have to then gap the spark plugs. But we're actually using iridium in this engine. The really cool thing about iridium is it is a better plug, but you get the added bonus of you're not supposed to gap these. The reason why is when you're trying to put the feeler gauge in between the electrode and the top here, you'd actually knock the coating off of the electrode and it'd work not as well as it should. So the cool thing about running these iridiums, you don't have to gap them. Now, I am going to put some anti-seize on this. Now, if you saw my video where I did the spark plugs on my R35 GTR, I got quite a bit of static from some people about doing this step because they made a big thing about how NGK has a release additive added to the threads already. I'm going to be honest, I don't trust that. And the reason why is I remember back in the day, I had a motorcycle someone sold me and they didn't put anti-seize on their spark plugs. And when I went to change the spark plug, it was fused to the head. I had to pretty much disassemble the entire engine. That's much easier to do on a motorcycle than it is on an RB26. So I am going to use anti-seize. It's up to you when you're doing your spark plug change if you want to trust it or not. For me, the extra peace of mind of having this on here just works great for me. The main reason why people say you shouldn't do it is it affects, how you torque it down. We're not using anything crazy, you just do it by feel. But so what you're going to do whenever you put a spark plug in is you always start it by hand first. Get it all the way down until it's seated. Because like I said, if you damage this head, it is a very expensive thing to fix. And you do not want to have to deal with that. So now I've got it seated by hand. I'm gonna use a small wrench simply because I can tell by feel when I'm torqued down properly because I've just done so many spark plugs in my life. And there we go. So we're gonna do the rest of the spark plugs and then put this all back together. Now all the spark plugs are in and torqued down, at least as far as my my wrist torque arm would do versus actually using an actual torque wrench. If you want to use an actual torque wrench because that makes you more comfortable, go ahead and do that. You'll just have to look up what the specs are online. Like I said, you just want to be careful because it's an aluminum head. If you tighten down too much, you could bust those loose and all of a sudden you're buying a new head. So do be careful if you are doing this yourself for the first time. So now that everything is back in, we're going to go ahead and put the coils back in, put everything back together, and then we'll fire up the car to make sure it works, and then I'll walk you through reading the spark plugs. Now what you can do if you want, and I would do it too, but it's up to you if you want to, is I'd actually, now that I think about it, you heard the other one, is I'd put a little anti-seize on these bolts too, because they do go through heat cycles. It's up to you if you want to do it.
No, it's a good call. If you want to go grab it, it's on the toolkit. But I want to be in just in case. Maybe a long light showing up or something. All right.
Now that we got the spark plugs in the car and we fired it up and the car is running, we know we did everything right. Now it's time to look at the spark plugs and read them. This is a very important part of any time you change the spark plugs on your car, because it'll let you know if your cylinders are having any issues as far as timing or fuel delivery. Now we're gonna look at these. I have them lined up 1 through 6 in a straight line so I know which came out of which cylinder. I'm gonna start here with the spark plug out of cylinder 1. Now, when you look at these, ideally you want to see a nice dusty brown right on this electrode right here. And that'll let you know that you're running in proper stowage or you're basically getting a proper burn. And if you see one that's a bright white, that means you're running lean. And that is a very, very bad thing, because that's how you start warping your heads, blowing head gaskets, and having all sorts of issues with the car. If it's black, that means that you're running rich. And rich has its own little issues. It's not as bad as lean, but if you're running rich, one, you're losing your horsepower, you're losing gas mileage, and you can start to get buildups in either your valves or the cylinders, or you can start clogging up your cat. So even running rich is a bad thing. So looking at these ones here, this is the one in cylinder 1, it's looking really dark. It lets me know that this is running rich. Now, especially right up here on the electrode, it's looking like it's dark, but it's kind of a lighter dark. And it really smells like fuel, which lets me know that maybe the car's running rich because the MAF needs to be cleaned, maybe the injectors are leaking. There's many things that could let me know that this car is running rich, at least on cylinder 1. Now we're gonna look at cylinder 2. Cylinder 2 looks almost exactly like cylinder 1. As you see, it's pretty dark there on that electrode, which means it's also running pretty rich, and it still smells very much like gasoline. Now, taking a look here at 3 before I go into 3, this really isn't a huge shock to us. The reason why is this car was brought over from Japan and we really don't know what the previous owner did. It's very obvious that this car was at a higher level of modification than it was when it was shipped over, which means he did stuff to the car. We don't know what, it was running more power, and then he put as much stock parts back on before he sold it. That way he could sell the upgraded parts and recoup even more money, which means there might be some other things going on that we don't know about. So here we go, looking at cylinder 3. This one's even darker than the first 2, which means this one's also running extremely rich. Yeah, smells strongly of fuel. Looking at 4, 4 is looking more like what we saw in 1 and 2, so it's running rich but not as bad as cylinder 3. Cylinder 4. Now see, this is what I was talking about when you're running forced air induction and you have that plenum, because the air gets pushed through the plenum and it kind of gets backed up at the back. So usually like 5 and particularly 6 run leaner than the others. And it's very apparent here. See, if you look, it looks a little bit lighter. It's not as dark. It's still pretty dark, but it's a little bit lighter. This leads me to believe that, yeah, this is still running rich, but it's not as bad. Now 6, which is usually the problem cylinder, I'm really surprised. Like, there's a very little amount of brown, but it's still pretty dark. This is where running lean was actually kind of beneficial for cylinder 6, because the whole engine is running rich, but this is a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, this whole engine's running rich, which means we need to start looking at something with this. Either we need to clean the MAF, maybe he's got some injectors that have just gone bad and they're leaking, because they might be the original injectors, so we might need to upgrade those, or at least update them, get them balanced and fuel tested. We've got fuel injection clinic here down in Southern California, which means sending them out is very easy to do and it's not terribly expensive. But this is good to know, because Mike is not running a wideband O2. We don't know exactly what his numbers are, but this is one way for us to figure it out. So we know he's running rich, which means we can now start turning our attention to figuring out why and fixing it. And there we go. We have now changed the spark plugs on an R32 Nissan Skyline GTR. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go hit that thumbs up button to let me know. It does help the channel out a lot. If you'd like to see more automotive, particularly GTR content in the future, go and subscribe to my channel. You can now follow me on all forms of social media, which include Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. I'll leave links to all those in the description down below. If you'd like to support the channel, I do have the JD Archer shop. If you go to jdarcher.bigcartel.com, you can see a limited selection of hats, t-shirts, and hoodies I've designed that are for sale. Don't forget to check out Mike's Garage, which is Mike who owns this blue R32 GTR. He's got more footage of this and more is on the way. If you have any questions or you feel there's anything I missed in this video, go and post in the comment section down below. I will respond to you. I thank you all for watching, and until next time, forget everything else, focus on the finish line.